Notts collapsed to hand Essex the initiative on day one. Both teams were looking to record their first wins of the championship season after a loss and a draw apiece in the first two rounds. Notts hoped to carry their strong white ball form forward from the Royal London One Day Cup, while Essex aimed to kick-start their season after earning a creditable draw against champion Surrey last time out. The Notts openers, Benz, Duckett and Slater, began in watchful fashion as Porter and Cook kept it tight. And the discipline of the Essex bowlers paid off as Porter pinned Duckett LBW from around the wicket for 7. That brought Chris Nash to the crease, and he punished Porter, dispatching him to the rope 4 times in an over with a series of brutal pulls and drives. The fun wasn't to last though, as Nash clipped a Sam Cook ball straight to square leg for 26 to leave Notts 38 for 2. The cricket became attritional as the Notts batsmen sought to consolidate, and the scoring rate slowed to a crawl after 5 successive maidens, before Slater caressed one through the covers for his first boundary from his 69th ball. The Notts pair were able to reach the lunch interval without further loss on 76 for 2 after an old-school fightback of 38 in 21 overs from Slater and Clark. Batting began to look easier in the afternoon session as Slater and Clark brought up their 50 stand, and soon after reached the visitors' 100, before Porter returned to end Slater's resistance on 45, with the opener nicking behind to end his 127-ball stay. And Porter struck again to put his side firmly in the ascendancy when he got one through Clark to bowl him for 48. Things went from bad to worse for Notts as Patel and Mullaney fell in successive overs, Patel edging behind off Siddle and skipper Mullaney picking out Brown at point off Cook. Moores and Fletcher tried to stage a recovery, but Moores gave Porter his 4th wicket when he slapped the ball to point, Brown again taking the catch to cap a disastrous afternoon session for Notts in which they lost 5 wickets. Luke Fletcher was not going to die wondering, and he swung Harmer over the rope for a maximum, before falling from the very next ball as he tried the same again, but could only top-edge it to Sam Cook. Zach Chappell fell for a duck on debut soon after when he miscued a ball from Harmer and could only pick out Westley. And Notts were all out in the next over when Carter also fell for a duck after he edged Siddle to 3rd slip. Notts all out for a disappointing 187. The Essex openers had 20 overs to negotiate until the close of play, and Alistair Cook set about batting them in customarily watchful fashion, with no boundaries coming up in the first 11 overs as Essex scored just 19. Before 2 boundaries in a Carter over took Essex to stumps in complete control at 68 without loss, 119 runs behind, with all 10 wickets in hand. Notts collapse again and heading for defeat. Essex dominated day one at Chelmsford to bowl out Notts and reached the close with all 10 wickets in hand and just 119 runs behind. But Notts were able to make the crucial breakthrough they needed early on day 2 when Stuart Broad claimed the scalp of Old England comrade Sir Alistair Cook when the opener had a nibble at one and could only edge to Mullaney at 3rd slip. That brought Tom Westley to the crease and he greeted Broad by taking a couple of boundaries from an over. And soon after, Nick Brown was able to bring up his 50 with a couple off Fletcher. Westley helped himself to another boundary off Broad, but the England paceman was able to get his revenge just 2 balls later when he trapped the right-hander LBW for 12. Brown and Lawrence then looked to steady the ship for a period after the loss of a couple of early wickets in the morning. Lawrence looked to be settling in as he helped himself to a couple of typically stylish boundaries off Fletcher and Carter. But the big Notts paceman had the last laugh when Lawrence played a loose drive and feathered through to the keeper Moores. And Fletcher made sure it was Notts' morning when he produced a peach to dismiss Patel, the Essex youngster edging to Matt Carter in the slips, to reduce Essex to 136 for 4 on the stroke of lunch. The fight back continued for Notts as the afternoon session began, as Nick Brown tried to cut Carter away and could only pick out Samit Patel at backward point. and in the very next over, Essex were in all sorts of trouble when Captain Tender Carter shouldered arms to a booming Fletcher in-swinger. And Matt Carter made it 3 wickets in 3 overs as the Essex innings began to unravel when White edged an attempted sweep onto his pad and into the hands of Slater at short leg. Essex were in danger of a first innings deficit despite dominating day 1 when Carter struck again to remove Porter, with Slater again taking the catch. But the experienced pair of Harmer and Siddle were able to dig in and take their side into the lead with a partnership that frustrated Nottinghamshire. They were able to bring up the 50 stand and move past the 200 mark to claim their side a batting point. The stand had reached 81 before Fletcher claimed Harmer LBW. And in his next over, the big Notts pacer was able to complete a brilliant 5-wicket haul when he rearranged the stumps of last man Sam Cook to wrap up the Essex innings and bring about the tea break. The Notts openers Duckett and Slater came out after tea and made a watchful start to their second innings as they tried to eat away at the deficit. But Ben Slater signalled his intent by sending Cook to the fence twice in succession, and Duckett got in on the act with a powerful boundary of his own. The openers were able to wipe out the deficit and began to look increasingly confident. But disaster struck when Duckett's eyes lit up at a Harmer delivery, but he could only pick out Porter at mid-off. And things went from bad to worse for the visitors just 1 ball later when Porter trapped Slater LBW, leaving Notts 2 wickets down and just 16 ahead. Notts were in danger of collapsing again when Clark fell in somewhat bizarre fashion when he edged onto his thigh and the ball looped up to Cook at slip. And Notts were heading for defeat after their second collapse of the match when Mullaney and Patel fell to consecutive balls from Harmer, both catches being taken by Tender Carter at short leg. Night watchman Matt Carter was able to survive the hat-trick ball from Harmer, but that was the extent of his resistance as he fell LBW to Siddle. That left Notts staring down the barrel at stumps on 90 for 6, just 38 ahead, with only 4 wickets remaining, and heading for defeat on day 3. Cook is cool as you like as Essex win comfortably. The Nottinghamshire batsmen collapsed for the second day in succession at Chelmsford as they slid towards a seemingly inevitable defeat on day 3. Notts' hopes of setting a competitive total lay largely with the 7th wicket pair of Nash and Moores, and they made a solid start to their morning's work after the chaos of the evening. They brought up the 100 for their side with few dramas. And just as Nash was starting to warm to his task after a couple of sweetly timed boundaries, Harmer was able to find some turn, and Nash could only find the hands of Lawrence at slip. Moores is a fine counter-puncher though, and Fletcher not one to go down without a fight, and they pushed the Notts lead towards 100. Harmer wouldn't be denied though, and he produced a beautiful bit of spin bowling to beat Moores, with White whipping off the bails, and perhaps ending the Notts' resistance. Porter accounted for Fletcher soon after. Harmer couldn't be kept out of the game and took a fine catch at slip. And it was all over for Notts in Porter's next over, with Broad failing to connect with an ugly swipe and seeing the stumps go flying. That left Essex needing 105 to win, and Nick Brown and Sir Alistair Cook came out to chase them. They made a hash of it initially, however, after a calamitous run-out with only 1 on the board. Brown the one to fall, with his partner not covering himself in glory. Cook steadied the ship with the help of new man Wesley though, as Essex reached lunch on 18 for 1, needing a further 87 to win the game. Cook and Wesley didn't take any risks in the afternoon session, knocking the Notts bowlers around and putting the bad balls away to the rope. Wesley was a little bit more expansive with his shot making, picking up boundaries off Broad and Carter, while Cook anchored the other end. But Wesley fell just 1 shy of his 50 when he pulled Samit Patel straight into the hands of Clark. It wasn't to make any difference to the result, however, as Cook pressed on unfazed to finish 40 not out, a welcome red inker for the England great as he tries to find some early season form. Essex winning comfortably in the end by 8 wickets and picking up their first victory of the season, worth 20 points. Notts are still searching for theirs and advance with just 3.
That was